So if the bank does not have any credit history, it becomes very difficult. So this leads to a kind of what should I say, a difficulty in screening the borrowers. So it leads to a difficulty in screening the respective borrowers. In screening borrowers, the borrowers. So difficulty in screening the borrowers. So basically, there is a new to bank customer. So the bank does not have any credit history, and it becomes very difficult to screen the borrowers because the borrowers bank does not have any idea about the historical performance of the borrowers, right? So from here, one part of the question that comes out is that if there is a difficulty in screening the borrowers, then how does the bank give? So that is the part where credit bureaus come in. So for the non-relationship borrowers, the banks rely heavily on credit bureaus, right? And if your region contains a bureau score, or I mean, if they have a credit bureau, then obviously, yes, bureau variables have to be incorporated in the acquisition model, and it is this bureau scoring. Bureau score will play a very critical role in designing the acquisition strategy because the bureau score will reflect the historical behavior of this borrower as far as credit is concerned, right? So apart from this segmentation, however, in the presence of bureau, the riskiness between the relationship and the non-relationship segment should actually go down, right? But if you think about this particular segment, right? However, the even though the riskiness may go down, it will not be absolutely terminated, right? So there will be some extent of riskiness difference between the two, but with the bureau, this may go down. Along with bureau information, so if bureau information flows into it, into the models, then there are scope of creating other segments as well, right? So for credit cards, this relationship and non-relationship segment is a very valid segment for giving out credit cards, right? So this is just one of the different segments that can be created. Now, another way of creating this segment is, or another way, two ways, uh, non-relationship, the distinction can be created is through the channels of acquisition. Okay, so before we move into the channels of acquisition, just let me highlight one more point. So what exactly is this credit bureau? So basically, what credit bureau does is credit bureaus contain information on the historical behavior of the borrower. So basically, banks submit their information to credit bureaus, and credit bureaus give the necessary information on the borrowers to the banks, right? So they basically contain the historical information of the borrowers or the borrower's credit history. So if you and I log into the Civil website, what we can actually identify is that what exactly our credit score is. So history of the borrower. So basically, if you have a credit bureau in your region, then it becomes very easy for you to develop your acquisition models. Otherwise, the biggest challenge of acquisition models is that for for products where there are non-relationship segments, it becomes very difficult to model the non-relationship segments, because generally banks do not tend to have any information about the non-relationship segments. Clear?
And
Yeah.
how does the credit bureau gets the information about the customers?
So basically,
Do
what
different
happens?
banks
Yeah,
submit?
yeah, yeah. All
Yes.
the banks, they submit their information to the credit bureau, right? And at the end of the
Okay.
day, when the
Mm-hmm.
bank requires information on a particular set of borrowers, they submit those IDs, and they submit the respective identification IDs, and the bureau fetches the information for them for all the variables that they have, and they give it to them, right? So
Okay.
and there is a charge
And
which banks have to bear for the number of variables they want to purchase. So the banks need to be very clear about that,
okay.
what are the variables, that what are the type of variables that I would need for hiring a borrower,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'll
Got
just
it.
tell you a very funny incident from my career. So basically, I was at Genpact at that point of time, and we were developing an acquisition scorecard for a US bank, for US NBFC. So what they wanted, so they used to extract these bureau information, I think from Experian or something. So so we had developed all the models. So he gave us variables, and the total number of variables was around 450 or 500, something like that. And from there, there was around 80, 60 variables which was purchased from the bureaus, and we did our all derived variables and everything, and we obtained the whole list of the variables, and then we developed the model, and finally we ended out with four variables, three or four variables to in the final model. So there was the entire variable drop down process which was given, and finally the most statistically significant variables were selected, right? So the scorecard was very good in terms of all its parameters. So basically, when we looked into it, the discriminatory capacity was pretty good, and it was better than we generally used to get. Now, having said this, having done that, the next thing that came out was, when we presented it to the client was really happy with the results, but he had a problem with us, that man, I had bought 60 variables from the bureau, right? So I had to bear that cost, I had to give that budget, and out of that, you tell me that there are these four variables that you have used. So that raises a question on my sincerity of purchasing. So we tried explaining to him that no, that is not your fault actually. So you need to get a larger number of variables, and all these four variables we have used actually uses 15 to 16 of your variables. But he was still not convinced. So what we said was that, see, man, these are all statistically insignificant variables. The other variables, these are the four variables which came out with the greatest significance. So he listened to us everything, and then he asked us that, what is your criteria for doing this and doing that, and what is your criteria for significance and all. And in an Excel sheet, we showed him that, okay, this is the p-value column, and based on this, we took our decision. So he listened to it very minutely, and then he said that, okay, so it is this Excel sheet, this column in Excel sheet, which is creating the problem, right? The p-value column. Then let's do something. Let's hide this column. And then what you can do is you can increase four or five more variables. So we were literally stunned to hear that, because if your model is not statistically significant, it's the business or the regulators will come after you. And obviously that is the first column that they would ask for, the p-value column, because when we go forward, we'll see that how this thing happens. I mean, how p-value is used to tell the statistical significance. So so we were literally like shocked to hear that you remove that column which decides on the statistical significance and increase the number of variables. So that is how actually clients are, right? So they can just go to any extent just to, defend them that whatever they have done is correct or something. But at the end of the day, if that was actually done, the business would come running after him.
Okay.
They would come running after us, and we would ultimately get thrown out of Genpact. So So,
Mm-hmm.
so these are the different type of clients. We generally get into analytics because the biggest problem with analytics is that but also with credit risk modeling is that it is such a technical field, and the clients they themselves are not aware of the technical side of things, and at times they are like you have to include so and so variables. It's like you are
Okay.
as if you are in a vegetable market and you are bargaining out that no 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 इतना में तो इतना ही देना होगा एक पत्ता धनिया एक्स्ट्रा देना होगा. So it's like that. So
Okay, got it.
right. So these are certain challenges that will come up to you or whoever works in credit risk modeling. Right. However, as you said, your plan was
Okay.
to move to Australia. I believe the extent of illiteracy is relatively less that side. But managers in
Yes, but yes, exactly.
yeah, so of the work that Australia does, I've seen they do very fine work. Whereas in Europe and America, most of these managers are they're damn illiterate people. They hardly know anything. All they understand is the business and the figures. So they are very accurate in telling you whether your model is giving you the correct figure or the wrong figure. That's all they can do. Okay. So having said that,
Hello.
hey, hi Harpreet.
Yes, I got disconnected.
Okay, 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 okay.
Okay. So I was saying that the people are literate, but I think they are not that much technical there. So
Yeah,
I
but
suppose we
they
can face
do
the same
have
problem.
yeah, but they have a sufficient understanding of the technicalities, right? They are not
Yes.
adamant to this extent, right? Because the US people they are
Mhm.
like very literate. So
Yes, I.
I've seen cases where
Mhm.
a person who enters the data, he doesn't understand the difference between a missing value and a zero. So wherever there was a missing value in sense, this guy had happily replaced it with zeros. So for him, is if a value is
Okay.
missing, that is zero. So undoubtedly, when we ran it through the codes, the code did not detect any missing observation because every cell was populated. On the other
Hmm.
hand, when we did when we did all these median mode checks, we saw that distribution was absolutely skewed in nature because there was a heavy concentration at zero. So these are some
Okay.
major challenges that used to happen. So yes,
Okay.
obviously, when you start working with the data like this,
Mhm.
getting acquainted with them.
So do you have data like this, and you will be
Yeah,
teaching me
yeah,
on
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I will
Okay.
be doing it.
Okay. And which PD model development will we be learning? Would it be for credit cards or will be it for some other
No,
datas?
the acquisition scorecard will be on a loans portfolio,
Okay.
and I mean there would be two application scorecard case studies. One will be a very
Mm-hmm.
simple case study called the German bank data, which will focus totally on the
Okay.
model development steps. Then
Okay.
we'll have a case study on term loans, personal loans,
Mm-hmm.
which will give us a idea about the data management steps. So how to manage the data properly, because in the German bank data, the data is pretty structured, right? And you can use it to understand the
Okay.
end-to-end steps of model development and the coding part. So that's level one. After that comes level two,
Okay.
where we work with data management, data inequalities, data challenges, etc. And then the model development.
Okay. Okay.
For behavior scorecards, we'll develop using credit cards, and then another one using
Mhm.
term loans, right? So that depends again on the time. So might be that I
Okay.
develop one case study in front of you end to end to give you an understanding of the modeling steps, and the other case study I
Mm-hmm.
share the codes out with you, and you run the codes at your end, and what you do is you get that done,
Okay.
right? So that is the way it will actually work,
Yes. Okay.
right? So I'll try to cover as much as case studies as possible, but ideally there would be
Mm-hmm.
three broad data sets, right? Three broad
Okay.
data sets
Okay.
on which we'll develop these five models. So one data is a very generalized data, and it will have all the information on all PDLGD, EAD, and everything. So we'll develop application
Mm-hmm.
scorecards, behavioral scorecards, and PDLGD, EAD. So that will be the entire horizon
Okay.
of models. And for developing them, we'll
Mm-hmm.
be mostly focusing on the traditional techniques like logistic regression, decision trees, etc. Right? I would be
Okay.
giving you an idea about the advanced analytical methods, but I would not be
Mm-hmm.
implementing them hands-on over here.
Okay.
Right? Because to
Okay.
do that, I need the R platform. So once
Oh.
once I'm able to develop this entire part on R, I then I might introduce it into the module. But as of now, it's totally on SaaS. I'll help once I start with SaaS.
Oh.
I'll help you with the installation side of it as well, right?
Okay.
Or and for your learning
Yes.
purposes, what I'll do is I'll share out a Google Drive link with you, which contains the
Mm-hmm.
recordings for different SaaS sessions. Okay, so you can
Okay.
actually start going through the SaaS sessions one by one, and so that
Mm-hmm.
you have a feel of it. But once before doing that, you need to get SaaS installed into your laptop. So just let me
Mm-hmm.
know of a date when your laptop will be free, when your husband doesn't have the laptop. Then I will
Okay.
help you out with the SaaS installation.
Okay. Sure.
Okay. Okay. So as I was saying,
Okay. ठीक है.
yeah. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, the credit bureaus, they contain the history of the borrowers, and they supply the relevant history to the banks. On the other hand, so therefore we can see that. So one point that we had discussed over there was that this relationship and the relationship segment has always been relatively less riskier than the non-relationship segments, right? Now, from here, the next part is, now apart from this, another source of riskiness is the channels of acquisition. So what are the channels through which the borrowers are acquired? One may be the direct channels. So what are the direct channels? Direct channels are the channels through which where the borrower applicant directly applies to the bank, and it is done through the bank. So that's the direct channel. The next part is the third party. Now for relationship borrowers, it is not through the third party. It is directly done through the bank, because a person who has account with the bank, with a given bank, the bank will directly approach him for credit. So therefore, all relationship borrowers are acquired through direct channels, right? So whereas for the non-relationship borrowers, what we have is the third party, right? Now with the direct farm, now with the you know with the direct channels are relatively less risky. So acquisitions which are done through the direct channels are relatively less risky. Relatively less risky. The next is the third party channels. So in third parties, what happens is that basically the people are willing to like, so in third party channels, so it's through the third party you outsource the acquisition. So therefore, the third party is in interest of their commission. What they would try to do is they would always try to you know just hire as much as people as possible on the books of the bank. So obviously your acquisition goes up, so the quality of the credit actually goes down. So Accounts which are acquired through third parties are relatively more risky, or these are the relatively risky set of accounts. Relatively more risky. So on one side it's relatively less risky and third parties are relatively more risky, right? So having said that, the next part that we need to talk about is, so basically these are the different sources to which origination risks might arise. So these are different sources where origination risks may differ, right? So for example, so however, whatever these variables are, whatever the segmentation criteria are, you will see that they arise as a part of, you know, your what should I say? So basically, they arise from different origins. So whatever your segments are, whatever segments, whatever different sources of acquisition risk that we are identifying, they represent the origination of the borrower. So be it relationship, non-relationship, that talks about a particular type of an origination. So be it within non-relationship, whether it's a direct acquisition or third-party acquisition. So these talks about the channels through which the borrower originates, right? So
Okay.
so these are some basic segmentation or basic segments which from riskiness arises in a bank. Now, talking about the behavior scorecards. Now, so basically, what is the problem that we are facing in an acquisition scorecard while developing an acquisition scorecard? The problem that we are trying to answer over here is that y equals to 1 if the borrower is a good borrower. If the borrower is good. If the borrower is good. In the second case, the second part of the dependent variable is y equal to 0 otherwise.
Uh, And the Y represents the probability of default,
No,
or
y is the dependent variable, is a target variable, right? So y is like
okay,
y equals to 1 if the borrower defaults. I mean, if the borrower is good, equal to 0 otherwise, right? Now,
okay,
these are the two possibilities that can happen. Either the borrower is good or the borrower is bad. So basically, if I give a loan to the borrower, so after a point of time, I'll see whether he becomes a good borrower or he defaults and he becomes a bad borrower. So that is what the point over here is, right? Now, standing today, I am about to give a loan to a borrower, right? Or to an applicant. Now, when I give a loan to an applicant, I need to understand whether this borrower is a good borrower or a bad borrower. But I am not God. I cannot exactly say whether this guy is a good or a bad. So I feel that this guy is a very bad guy, but at the end I see that he turns out to be a good guy, or vice versa. Right. So when this happens, the next part that we talk about, or what we need to understand is that how good or how bad is he as a borrower. That is what I need to understand. That how good or how bad is this guy as a borrower. So obviously, as a lender, the best I can do is I can try and estimate his probability of being a good or a bad borrower. So my objective over here is to predict the probability of y equals to 1, right? So when I'm trying to acquire him on the books, what I'm trying to estimate is that what are his chances, what are the chances of this borrower of being a good borrower. So that is that probability of y equals to 1 which I am actually estimating over here, right? And the moment I can estimate probability y equals to 1, so from there I can also estimate 1 minus the probability of y equals to 1. That will be the probability of y equal to 0. So this probability of y equal to 0 will give me the chances that this borrower will be a bad borrower or he will be a defaulter. So this part is
Uh,
called,
I am not very clear on this. That y is equal to 1 when the borrower is good. Is it like it's defined that y is
yeah,
some
yeah.
variable
So
which
so
will
y
be
is,
1?
yeah, so y is a target variable which takes two values.
Mm-hmm.
So it either takes a value
Okay.
1 or a value 0, right? So basically,
Okay.
if a borrower has
Mm-hmm.
been a good borrower, so suppose say there
Mm-hmm.
were loans which had originated in the year 1st Jan 2015, right? So standing
Mm-hmm.
today, so as on February 2018, I have seen that out of those loans which were given on that day, say there were 1,000 loans which were given. So out of those 1,000 loans,
Okay.
900 loans turned out good. So I flagged them as
Mm-hmm.
111. And the loans which turned out as bad, I
Okay.
flagged them as 000.
Okay.
Right. So I have the
Mm-hmm.
observed flags. Now, based on those, I'm trying to develop a model. So if I'm trying to develop a predictive model, so what is my objective? My objective is to understand that what exactly are the chances of this borrower or this applicant sitting on the other side of the desk. What are his chances of being a good borrower, right?
Okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
now when I'm doing a predictive modeling, I don't know whether he will be a good or a bad borrower. So all I can say is that if I give him the loan, what are his chances of being a good or a bad borrower?
Okay.
Right. So that is the probability of y equals to 1 that I am talking about.
Okay. Got it.
Right. So more simply, I'll tell you. Say there are a class of students, right? Some of them has failed in class while they were being promoted. Some of them turned out to be toppers. Some of them turned out to be failures. So what I do is the people who had done good, according to my definition, I flag them as bad, as one, and those who have done bad, I flag them as 0. Now what I'm trying to understand is that when these guys go to class 10, standing from today, 12 months down the line, how many of them or will a guy do good or bad in the board exams? Right. So all I can do at this point, standing today, if I'm doing the prediction for ICSC 29 or ISC 2019, I can stand here today and I can just frame a probability that this guy has a high probability of doing good. This guy has a very low probability of doing good. So that is all I can do. Right. So similarly over here, when I'm giving the loan to the guy, or when I'm taking the decision whether to give a loan to the guy, what I'm trying to consider is should I give the loan or not? I don't know whether he will actually turn out to be good or whether he will actually turn out to be bad. Are you getting my point, Harpreet? Are you clear on this?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Great. Okay. Okay. Great. So over here, when so basically this y equals to 1 is called the event, and y equal to 0 is called the non-event. So basically, when we are flagging, we need to decide what is it that we are trying to define as event, and what is it that we are trying to define as non-event. So that is important. So over here, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to define the probability y equals to 1, that is probability that the borrower is good. Therefore, 1 minus probability y equal to 1 is what? That the borrower has chances of defaulting, right? So this is also called the acquisition, the origination period. The chances of a borrower to go bad that you are estimating at a given point in time is called the acquisition PD. So basically, that you are trying to estimate at the origination. So looking into his credit history. So you have not looked into his observed behavior. What you have done is you look into his credit historical past, and based on that past, you try to frame an idea at origination while giving the loan that this is the chance of this borrower of being a bad borrower, right?
Okay.
So an acquisition PD is the probability of a borrower to default, which is estimated at origination. Excuse me. So what we want to do understand over here is that what exactly is that. So basically, based on his historical credit patterns, what are his chances of defaulting, given given his historical behavior from other banks, or given his historical credit history, what are the chances that this borrower might turn out to be a bad borrower? So that is called the acquisition PD. So acquisition PD is the chances of the probability of a borrower to become bad, which is estimated at origination. So when you are estimating it at origination, you are not basing it on his actual repayment behavior, but what you are doing is you are looking into his historical repayment behavior with other banks, right, that you have extracted from the credit bureau, and you are trying to frame an idea about the probability of default. Because suppose when I'm developing the acquisition PD, what I'm actually doing is I am standing today, right, and I'm thinking whether to give a credit card to this guy or not. This guy does not have a credit card, but he had taken a personal loan, an automobile loan previously, and on that he has a history of payment patterns, right? So what happens is when you have a look into this guy's behavior, what happens is you know that okay, there's this guy who has taken this, right, and he has been diligently paying back his loans, and hence I believe that this guy can pay back the loans diligently to me as well. Therefore, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll calculate his probability of being a good or a bad borrower accordingly. But I have not given him the credit product as of now. So the observed PD will be when I give him the credit card and I look into his payment pattern on the credit card, and then based on that I'll take the decisions. Right?
Okay.
Okay. Now from this estimated probability of y equals to 1, that is the probability of a borrower of being a good borrower, what we try to do is we compute an acquisition score or an origination score. Okay, so from this probability we generally design something called an acquisition score. Now this acquisition score is something which is used for understanding, this acquisition score is something which we use for understanding the different possibilities. So this acquisition score is a transformation of this probability of default. So based on this problem, I mean based on the probability of y equals to 1, the probability of a borrower being a good borrower, there is an acquisition score which is being generated, right? So therefore, this acquisition score is responsible for the acquisition score is responsible for developing acquisition strategies. So the acquisition score is so higher the probability of a borrower of being a good borrower, the higher is the acquisition score. So I'll name it as SI. So SI is the acquisition score. SIA. SAI is the acquisition score for the ith borrower. Right now, to decide whether I would give a loan to the borrower or not, there will be a cutoff acquisition score, say SA star. Right now, if the score of the individual is greater than the acquisition score, the cutoff acquisition score, then the credit will be accepted, else the credit will be rejected. So hence the loan will be given, or the credit card will be given, or the credit card will be rejected. Loan will be accepted, else the loan will be rejected. So this gives us a yardstick. Now by adjusting this cutoff score, I can adjust for the number of adjust the quality of the credit that is being lent out. So is the credit going out to good borrowers or is the credit going out to bad borrowers? So I can actually adjust that. Right?
Okay.
Great. So let's see how this acquisition score helps us overcome the challenges which the traditional banking actually had. So basically, traditional banking used to play around with the rate of interest to, for the to control the quality of the quantity of the credit. So what they used to do was something like this. So people believe that the rate of interest or the quality quantity of the funds borrowed was negatively related to the rate of interest. So basically, say over here we had the quality of quantity of the funds, and over here we have the rate of interest. So what we have is the negatively sloping graph, right? So basically, higher the rate of interest, lower is the quantity of the funds. right? So over here, what we have is the rate of interest and the quantity of funds, right? However, so what banks used to do was whenever they wanted to control the quantity of the credit, they used to raise the rate of interest, right? The next thing is, so basically what happened was when the rate of interest was increased, the quantity of credit went down. The overall demand for credit went down. But the limitation of this approach was that it controlled for the quantity of the credit, not for the quality of the credit. So what happened was that when the rate of interest were higher, right? So people who were ideally the good borrowers, they started moving out of the system because they knew that it would become difficult for them to pay back the loans. Who actually entered into the credit system were the bad borrowers. So what happened was there was a large number of people who came in, took the loan, and they just happily went and defaulted. So when this traditional banking approach, right, the quantity of the credit was controlled with the increase in when the rate of interest was increased, the quantity of the demand went down, the quantity of credit went down, but it did not assess for the quality of the credit, right? You could not assess for the quality of the credit, and hence credit got channelized into the wrong hands. And this was a very traditional approach which was followed, during the 1930s banking system. Because what people used to do was they in those days you did not have these very stringent approaches or KYCs and data management infrastructure and everything, which would help them capture the behavior of the borrower, and there were no credit bureaus as such, and everything was done so manually. So this traditional practice during the 1930s led to huge amount of defaults, and hence banks also started collapsing because on one hand, while the amount of credit actually went down, on the other hand, the quality of the credit also went down, and there were these bad borrowers. So for that lower amount of loans which were lent out, there was huge amount of defaults. Right. Hence, this did not result. I mean, this was not responsible for efficient credit management. For efficient credit management. Efficient credit management. So this efficient credit management was not there, and hence, since credit management was not there, therefore the risk management activities was also not there. Right? So application scorecards help us overcome this problem. Now by adjusting the application score cut of application scores accordingly, I can always create I can always start filtering out the good borrowers versus the bad borrowers. Clear? So this is how this application scoring helps us not only manage the quantity of the credit to be given out, but also the quality of the credit, because it decides on the amount of credit to be lent out on the characteristics of the borrowers, not on the characteristic of the no, not on some macroeconomic characteristic like rate of interest. Right. So in the traditional methods, the quality of the credit could not be managed. Over here, using application scorecards, and later we also using behavior scorecards, the not only the quantity of the credit can be maintained at a given interest rate, but also the credit can be channelized to the better quality borrowers.
Okay,
Right? Okay.
got it.
So now the question is that I use these application scores. So what are the uses of an application score for a credit card? What are the uses? How would I use this application scorecard? So basically, application scorecards are used to design acquisition strategies. And this acquisition score has two broad uses. So first use of acquisition score is that the acquisition score will help us decide on the accept decline strategy. So should a borrower be accepted or declined? So obviously one part which we need to focus on over here is the accept decline strategies, right? The next part that I have over here is the limit assignment strategies. So the second part that I have over here is the limit assignment strategies. So basically, when I give the first question that I want to know is whether I should give a borrower a credit card or not. Now, if I give the borrower a credit card, then I must also give him a limit. So, how much of limit should I access, right? Because when I decide to give him the credit card, that is where I decide that credit should be given to him. So, this is the part where I am designing working on the quantity of the credit, right? Now, again, sorry, that's the part where I'm working the quality of the credit. So, is the borrower an affordable and a reliable borrower to whom this loan can be given? That's one. Now, with the limit assignment, I am controlling the quantity of the credit. So, with accept decline strategy, what I am doing is I am trying to assess the quality of the credit, right? The quality of credit. The next part that I have over here is the quantity of credit. The quantity of credit. So over here, what I have is the quality of credit, and the second part that I have over here is the so one part is the quality of credit, and the other is quantity of credit, right? So basically, first of all, I decide whether I should give the borrower a loan or not, and then what happens is I try to assess whether I should be giving him or the what is the amount of credit that I should be giving out to this borrower, right? So these are the two major activities that an acquisition scorecard is used in. Apart from other, there are other strategies where application scorecard, I mean the application score is used as an input, but these are some of the other uses, right? Okay, so any questions up to this point, Harpreet?
No,
Okay, great,
it's clear.
great. So the next part that we talk about is that when I talk about accept, decline, limit assignment, and all, so let us understand how the how this application process actually goes on. So application, I have this application scorecard, and I have developed this application scorecard, and with which I've generated the scores. Now I need to decide on this accept, decline, and etc. So how does that entire tree happen? So how what exactly is that spread? So basically, all the applications which come out to a bank during a given point in time, say over a month, is called the through the door population. So the through the door population is nothing but it is the sum of all the applications which have come down to the bank. So that is called within a given span of time. This is called through the door publication, right? Through the door population. Now, what is this through the door population? Now, what are the sources from which the through the door population comes? So, this is the list of all the applications that come in. So, there can be online applications. There can be branch visits. So, basically, they might come to the branch and they take it up. They directly inquire about the branch or inquiry counter. The next part is, so one is online, the online side. The other is a branch visit. The third is, as we had said, third party channels. So what they have is third party channels. Then also another source through which this happens is ATMs. You would see that often when you log into the ATM to draw money, they ask you whether you have any loan requirements or not, right? Then there is a telephone or phone calls. So they inquire about the phone calls from there, right? Or etc. So there are these are the different channels through which these through which the application actually comes in. So, however, the two most prominent channels are one, the most prominent channel ideally generally is a branch visit, and after then is third party channels, right? So, the others are online ATM phone calls, and the other are distributed among them. So, these are the channels. These are some of the channels which I could remember about through which these inquiry starts coming. The inquiry comes in. Right. Okay. Now the through the door population meets three kind of fate. One is that they may get accepted. So this is one of the way where you give where the application gets accepted, right? The second that happens over there is it might get rejected. might get rejected. And the third is pending. Pending. There is accepted, rejected, or pending. So out of the thousand, say suppose 1,000 applications have come in, out of that some get accepted, some get rejected, and some get pending. Right?
Okay.
Okay. Now after this, the next part that comes in is that they are so if they are accepted. Now if they are accepted, then they are, so basically if the applications are accepted, then yes, they are obviously accepted. So nothing more to do with these accounts, right? And they directly go into the books of the bank, and then limit assignment is done and stuff. So now if they are rejected, what happens if they are rejected? Now there are two things that can happen, or two reasons because of which they might get rejected. So one is that they might be a score reject. There might be a score reject. Score reject. There might be a policy reject. Policy reject. So there might be a score reject. There might be a policy reject. So score reject is, or a score rejection actually happens when you know that there is a borrower and that borrower does not meet the score requirements. So he is actually then rejected. So he does not meet the score requirement. He does not have sufficient affordability, etc., or reliability for the product. The other part is that he does not satisfy the other criteria that are required for that product to be there. So he does not satisfy the policies that are required for this particular thing. So policy, so and hence he is a policy reject. Right?
Okay.
So obviously, so what exactly is score reject? Score reject is pretty simple, that you can understand that he does not satisfy the score cutoff that is required for him to take the particular product. On the other hand, a policy reject is something where you do not satisfy a policy. Say for example, you are a non-relationship borrower and you satisfy all acceptability, all norms of acceptability for the bank. But what doesn't happen over there is, or what doesn't happen actually is that you do not, so the product that you applied for is not given to non-relationship borrowers. So it is only given to relationship borrowers. Therefore, even if you have applied for that product, you become a policy reject, right? So under policy reject, there are some product restrictions. There are sanctions, pending instructions, which need to be passed out, right? However, there are cases for both these rejected populations. So the rejected populations often get referred to underwriters. They often get referred to underwriters. underwriters, right? So the underwriting bodies, what they do is they underwrite the probabilities, right? They underwrite the, they go through the application and they consider whether that can be accepted to some case. So basically these, be it a score reject or a policy reject, so these are basically, they together are called system rejects, because generally the model is implemented in the system, and hence when they pass through the system rejects them, and once the system rejects them, then their role goes to the underwriters. That is where the system goes to the underwriters, right? And now if the underwriters approve them, then they are accepted. If the underwriters do not approve them, then they are rejected, right? So this is more or less the overall flow for the diagrams, right? So over here what you have is basically whether an account is accepted, rejected, pending. And within rejected there are two types of reject. One is score reject and there other is policy rejects. And then what you also have is system, the system rejects. Okay. Now, now the now the system reject plus the policy. Sorry, the accepted plus the rejected base together is called the completed applications, right? And for a given time period, only the the completed applications enter into a snapshot, or into into so when we develop models, we'll only be considering this accepted snapshots, right? So whereas whereas the pending are not included. So for example, say out of 1,000 accounts, uh, there are 100 which has been pending applications. So there are accepted, so the accepted and the rejected applications together, they comprise of, to get the accepted and the rejected applications, they together comprise of your completed application. So if in a given month, so there have been 1,000 applications, and out of that 100 has not, hundreds are pending, then the total number of applications which will enter for that month is the total of accepted plus rejected applications. The pending applications will not enter. Right. So is this framework clear to you?
Yes.
Okay. Now the next part that we also need to understand is that there are Now, talking about score rejects and policy rejects and stuff like that, what we can say is that there are there are different credit products that we have generally. Okay, so and I mean, especially for credit cards, there are different kind of products, and for some products, scores are not applicable, whereas for some products, scores are applicable. So, for example, let's take the case of Mukesh Ambani's son. Now, if he applies for a credit card, he might himself might be a student and he might not have the capability, right? But given that he has a huge amount of wealth in his name in his bank account, so the bank would obviously overlook the the bank would obviously overlook uh, the score part, because he himself does not have any kind of affordability at his own, but he has a huge bank balance or relationship amount which he maintains with the bank. So then he automatically becomes a premier customer for the bank. So in that case, even if his score is low, but that score is overridden by the fact that he has a huge amount of bank balance, and that is known as you know so this kind of characteristic or this kind of a thing is known as your low score overrides. So low score overrides appear when you do not have the scores, right? You do not have the appropriate capacity to purchase a product on your own. But what you can do is you can actually use your wealth with the bank, and against that you can get that loan. So there are different products, right? So there are cases where application scores may not come in. So the next step is to understand the different types of banking products that are different types of credit card products that we come up with, or the people, I mean, you know the amount of product that people come up with, or the banks they come out with. So depending on the type of the product that I subscribe to, I can determine whether application score will be used or not. So now generally, credit card products are broadly of three types. So if you survey the credit products that different banks, different national and international banks have, so you will see that there are broadly three types of credit products. So one type of a credit product is a premier credit product, right? Then there is an advanced credit product. An advanced credit product. There is a mass credit product. So premier, advanced, and mass, right? So premier products are those type of products, which are very exquisite products. And for premier products, there are mostly these characteristics. So for a premier product, you have, see, you can have the following two. subdivisions going further. So what I'm telling you about this product, so it does not mean every bank has this classification. What I'm saying is, so if you study the different credit card products which most of the bank gives, these are the three, you know, groups that you can actually create for the credit products which they have. So for the credit, that they have to offer. So one of the credit products that they have to offer over here is, say, Premier by Wealth. Premier by Wealth. The other that I have is Premier by Salary. So obviously for the Premier products, obviously there would be large number of facilities, right? There would be a huge credit limit, and this would be for people who have exorbitantly high salaries, right? So people who have salaries of the type, like, who have salaries like 20 lakhs annually, or 25 lakhs annually, like this. So you have to have annual income, and then that is a very high range of annual income which you need to have, so that you can actually manage this. So that is where this is the Premier by Salary, and over here what you have is the Premier by Wealth, right? So now from here, the next part that we need to work around is the advance, right? So what is Premier by Wealth? So basically, if you have a certain cutoff of wealth with the bank, then you need not apply. Then you go through the application process. You can directly apply for a card, and you basically get a pre-approved card. Right. So pre-approved cards are, or pre-approved loans are those amount of loans which base your salary the bank will give you hands down, and you need not go through an application scorecard or application score process. However, if you have to apply for a loan greater than the pre-approved amount, then you are actually processed through it. So basically, if the amount of wealth that I have with the bank, right? So suppose if my grandfather has left me some $100 million and I maintain that with the bank would be most happy to give me the credit card, because the person knows that even if this guy does not earn anything, he has sufficient amount of money in the bank to pay me back the credit. Right?
Hello?
Yeah, tell me.
No, I thought that I lost the
No,
connection.
no,
I
no,
was
no,
just
no, no,
checking.
no. No, no, I just stopped for you to just go through it, and then we'll get started again.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So this is what the Premier products are. Right. Great. Okay, Harpreet, let's do one thing. Let's stop here for the day. Right. I'll upload the recordings of the last three sessions, four sessions, and then you go through those recordings. You go through the study materials that then I'll share this PDF with you. So once you are done, then we'll continue it with the next class. So in the next class, we'll talk mostly about behavior scorecards, and then we'll move on to other credit products as
Okay.
well, right?
And you'll share the link today and the PDF as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. Link I might share it
Okay.
tomorrow because all these recordings need to get converted, right? So it's yesterday's
Okay.
recording
No
will get it
problem.
converted. So once that is done, I
Okay.
will share it.
Okay. No problem.
Okay. Thank you, Harpreet.
Mm.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.